So I'm delighted to be joined today by Mary-Rose from Hartland International School in Dubai. Welcome, Mary-Rose. Glad to have you with me. Would you like to introduce yourself, please,
I
just for
will.
people that don't know
Thank
you?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's lovely to be here, Elizabeth. So my name is Mary-Rose Grieve. I've been the school librarian at Hartland International since it opened in 2015. We now have a primary and secondary and staff library, but I'm also a member of the National Committee of the School Libraries Group, CILIP School Libraries Group in the UK. And thanks to that, I'm the co-chair of the Great School Libraries campaign. With the CEO of the School Library Association, and I also sit on the newly formed Association of School Librarians in Dubai. I run an OU teachers reading group here and have done for the last 8 years. And I was once upon a time in 2019 the UAE School Librarian of the Year. So I think
Yay.
that's yes. So I mean, it was actually thanks to all of that all the rest of it that all the rest of it came. So I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, a
Very,
busy lady. So I am very grateful that you are able to come and join me during March for these really quick, short chats. So I just want to let listeners know what we're going to do is that um, Mary-Rose and I are going to focus our discussions on some of the real challenges for school librarians in the UK and across the world, including funding and resources, professional registration and status, workload and unrealistic expectations, impact on students, and future of school libraries. And I'm sure that we can think of more as we go along, but hopefully you get the idea. These will be short 15-minute episodes, so we hope you'll find it interesting. But as always, we'd love to hear from you, our listeners. So if you have something you think we should be discussing, then please do get in touch. So this first one, we're going to look at or talk about the state of the school libraries in the UK. So let's be honest, Mary-Rose, how bad is it?
gosh, well, I mean, I think an awful lot of people would say that it could definitely be better.
Yeah.
We don't want to be all doom and gloom about this, but we all know that there's a huge way to go before the status and the value of school librarians is recognised in the way that I think it should be. Um, as you probably know, the Great School Libraries campaign has done 2 bits of research into finding out, because we don't even know how many school libraries there are in the UK officially. So we have researched into that, and they do seem to be on the decline. And librarians know how important librarians and libraries are to schools.
Yeah.
I think what's less obvious and I think it is obvious that there are fewer people in the education sector as a whole who understand exactly how important it is to have a school library and a librarian.
And I think probably the question's been asked um, in the UK government recently about school libraries, and the response is always back. It comes back that it's up to the senior leadership team as to whether they want to fund one or not. That's really difficult if the person who's running the school doesn't fully understand the value of what a school library and librarian can bring to the education process, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
it's you know
And
it,
of course, I mean, there's lots of reasons for that, but I think for such a long time, all of those school leaders and all of those teachers are a product of the education system in which they're now working, and
absolutely.
that education system has never has never valued the idea of research. And when I say valued, I think probably at this point it's about whether it's recognised in an exam system.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think everybody, and we know it because so many people are so keen to speak up about how important school libraries are. We all know that children need to have access to books,
Yeah.
and people are, I think, really shocked that they don't in a school because it's
Absolutely.
perfectly obvious.
there is an assumption, isn't there, that every
Yeah.
school has a library.
Yes, and of course, I mean, at the very basic level, children are learning to read and write, and you can't learn to read and write unless you've got books in front of you. So, of
Yeah,
course, therefore, one ought to have a library. However, when you then go a little bit deeper into that, a library is not just a room full of books in
no,
it. It needs to have a librarian working in it, and it's at that point that I think things start getting tricky because for so long librarians have been under school library. I think what the point is that there's a little bit of a difference between a public librarian and a school librarian. And I
yeah,
think what they bring to their role is very different.
yeah,
And well-being and reading for pleasure are a hugely important part of their job, but there is also just, I would say, equal weighting, just as important part of teaching and learning. And I think that's where we are fighting, well, not fighting, but where we're fighting to be heard, because
yeah.
we're not valued in that way. And we're not understood in that way, that the job that we do, I don't think people can see how important it is in the curriculum and teaching and learning.
So do you think it's getting worse?
Well, certainly at the moment, I think it is, but
Yeah,
that's all to do with funding, isn't it? Um,
yeah,
and and as all kinds of other things are competing for an increasingly smaller amount of money, um, the there is, I think it probably is getting worse. Um, but that's not to say we can't make it better. We can't make a difference.
no,
We absolutely
absolutely.
can. That's why school librarians are such a valuable resource, because we're so good at we should be so good at telling people how what we can bring to the party, and how children can benefit from having a school library.
Well,
And
I think that that was evident in the inaugural fossil symposium that we um, had the other day. You know, so many people coming together to bring a understanding of what the value of the school librarian, and especially through inquiry. And it just fascinates me that there are really good pockets of um, educational excellence going on in schools that value their school librarian. And I'm really proud that we actually managed to achieve that. But I think it's giving voices to librarians that sit in the library and feel that there's nothing more for them. And I strongly believe that actually if we can inspire and engage and empower them to have a voice, I think that that's the starting point, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, I absolutely agree. And I mean, that what's interesting about listening to those librarians and the talks that happened at the symposium was how many different ways librarians are impacting the school in which they work.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
that it, that they're almost, there's a sort of, we're not one size fits
No,
all.
no.
There isn't a standard school librarian who does this. Actually, our skills can shift and change according to the environment that we're in, and we can bring knowledge, skills, experience, wisdom, understanding about particular areas of librarianship and learning and curriculum development in school. And it all depends on how schools are set up and how they run themselves and what they value, because every school has its own character and its own idea of what it wants to do, its own curriculum. Um, and being able to adapt to that, but also to drive change. I really like the idea of librarians being just generally slightly, well, what do I want to say, gentle agitators,
It's a good
able,
word.
just challenging and pushing boundaries, because surely that is the point of school, where we're wanting to create children who are questioning and curious and thinking critically about what they're told. And as adults, we need to model that. And that's what librarians do. We're not just gatekeepers, but we're able to question things deeply ourselves, and to value and understand, and to question our colleagues, and to challenge them a bit, and to be challenged, and to have the resources open for people to be able to feed their curiosity and questioning. That's what we want, isn't it?
So do you think, though, that for a librarian who arrives in a school with no background, particularly in school librarianship, we're going to talk later on about the need for professional development, but that'll be in a different podcast. But does there have to be, or can there be, if every school is different, should there be some kind of guidelines that is a starting point for everybody?
Oh, absolutely. And I think those guidelines are as much for the rest of the staff as they are for the librarian.
Yeah.
That there are certain there's a professional standard to which
Yeah.
we should be adhering, and not I mean, us as librarians should be adhering, but also to help the senior leadership team, middle leaders, HR, whoever it is, understand how to get the best out of their librarian, and what to expect them to be able to do or not. So, so that is absolutely crucial. Otherwise, obviously there are some important and basic parts of our job,
Yeah.
but to how much of an extent those are used depends, I think, perhaps on the school that you're in. But there certainly needs to be a set of professional standards.
So what we're probably talking about then is the IFLA School Library Guidelines, if
Yeah,
in all honesty, because it's an international document. But
yeah,
however, saying that, there's certainly the need for local, national, and even school guidelines that come
yeah,
from it. So
yeah.
so it's really interesting, isn't it, that we need, because I think there are the CILIP school library guidelines as well, aren't they? And
Hmm.
they should be linked to the IFLA school library guidelines. So we're not all making it up as we go along. We have a professional standard. Our professional standard is based on that international work, but then we're going to adapt it for our level. If we can engage schools in those kind of conversations with an understanding that, we are not making it up as we go along, although each school, each librarian, each group of teachers, each group of students is different and have different needs, we have a professional standing. And I think that that's a really important, significant point to maybe finish this first episode on, is that how do we make sure that those people that are going to be making the decisions about whether they have a school librarian or not actually understand what the value is, and maybe that's the IFLA school library guidelines to start with, and then the CILIP school library guidelines as a UK alternative.
Yeah, I think I absolutely agree. And I mean, the IFLA school library guidelines are, as you say, the gold standard, and
Yeah.
each nation adapts them to fit, which is where CILIP comes in. And I do think those are incredibly useful, not just for librarians, but for also everyone in the educational sector, to be able to understand what this brilliant person that they have in their library, and how they could empower them to do some brilliant things. Because at the end of the day, what's important is how well we do for these children, and how successful they are when they leave school. And that's what we're all here for. And that's what those guidelines help.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining me today, Mary-Rose. Anything that we've talked about will be in the show notes below. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our next conversation. Thanks very much for listening.
Thank you.